Looking in, VTRP 1542, duration approximately 25 minutes, replay TBA.
Well, it's a wild, windy day today, and of course not everyone likes the wind, but I've come across a family today who absolutely thrive on it because it gives them a chance to exercise their favourite sport, hang gliding. Everyone in the family practices the sport, and you're going to meet them on Looking In today, right after this break. Kevin Duncan is a hang glider and father of the Flying Duncans, a team of 3 lads who are doing remarkably well in their favourite sport, hang gliding. Kevin, to lots of us, hang gliding looks a very difficult and dangerous exercise, but your family absolutely love it. How did you get into the game?
Oh, well, I started flying it'd be about 8 to 9 years ago. Just another part of water skiing at the time it was, and grew a bit tired of water skiing and moved on to kite flying, and from kite flying to hang gliding onto the cliffs.
You would have been one of the original hang gliders in Australia at that rate, because it was a fairly new sport then.
Oh yeah, it was. Friend of mine, Bill Moyes, which no doubt everybody would have heard about, we got a kite off him and we started flying. It's just not all as easy as this. You just got to learn the right way and the safe way above all things.
Now, we have factories to manufacture kites now, but did you have to set about building your own kite or do a lot of the work initially?
No, we have our kite supplied because the boys fly so well. They're pretty well up in the tops in the flying, and they get their kite supplied to them.
Well, I think perhaps you could introduce us to the boys. Who have we got on the end there? Junior member of the family.
On the end is my youngest son, Russell.
How old's Russell?
Russell is 13. Shane, the next one along, is 17, and Ricky has just turned 15.
Now, you say that your wife has an interest in flying too, but she doesn't fly in competition events.
No, she has flown, and we have what's called a ski plane, which we fly on the water. We take people up for rides in it. The wife likes this. The boys often take mum up in it, and she takes a hand and flies herself. She has also flown solo.
Now, you started 9 years ago. At what age did you introduce the boys to the sport?
Oh, they just watched until they were big enough, and it just all seemed to happen. They took it on, learned a lot easier than me without the bangs and the spills that go with it, you know. Well, they've been flying 2 years now.
Do you get scared watching them?
No, I don't get scared, but sometimes they do a little bit of a hairy thing, and it worries me sometimes, but they're pretty sure of themselves and very careful. I drum this into them. Careful and safety is the biggest factor of kite flying.
Now, kites are very beautiful things to look at. This one behind us is quite spectacular. It's lovely colours and very beautiful out here on the lakeside setting. What does it cost to set yourself up with a kite like this?
Oh, well, a hang gliding kite is available, you could say $625. You can get cheaper ones, but my theory is you get the best, and learn to fly from that. After all, it's your life is worth the best, isn't it?
Well, you're a long way off the ground. Talking of that, what sort of heights do you fly at?
Oh, the legal limits is 300 feet above the terrain, but you know, you just fly to where it's safe and stick to the laws, so the kite flying will not get any... oops, we've got a kite taking off by itself.
There we are, safely anchored again. I might just hang on to it. Not that I want to take off with it, I can assure you.
It's pretty keen to go, isn't it?
It is very keen, and the weather's perfect. What sort of weather conditions do you need?
Oh, well, for tow flying, anything from still air to a bit of wind. We would rather the wind if we practice in the in the wind, we know we're not going to get any worse elements than a very windy day. So then when we go somewhere and it's very fine in the competitions and it comes up windy, well, we're used to the wind, and it's the best way to look at it.
That's fine. How much practice do you have to put in to keep, really on top?
I'd reckon we'd put in about 10 hours a week, which is a fair bit of time. This is hang gliding and boat towing too.
So there are the two forms of flying, the tow and the cliff takeoff.
Yes, this is right. One, we run the rope out and it's towed by a speedboat, which isn't looked upon very safely by a lot of flyers, but if it's done right, it's very safe. As I say, I've been flying this way for some 9 years, and hang gliding is the one where you go off sand hills, cliffs, sand dunes or anything like this. They're both a safe sport as long as you go steady at it and learn from the bottom to the top.
Well, Kevin will be back to tell us a little bit more about those two methods of flying just after this next break. Kevin, this is a space-age sport. It was born of space research.
Well, this is right, and a chap called Duncan converted it to a hang glider or towed kite in the first place, and Bill Moyes further developed it and got the bugs out of it and got it flying as a water kite, and from that to a hang glider onto the hills, as you've probably seen.
I understand that originally they were interested in using kites like this to bring down space capsules, but that was abandoned and it became a sport in its own right.
That's dead right, for sure.
Now, Bill Moyes is an Australian, and I suppose Australians can almost claim to be the founders of hang gliding as it is today.
Yeah, to all my knowledge, this is right. Although in America they have a lot of flyers and things are claimed everywhere what happens, but as far as I know, Australia is the birth of the kite flying.
Now, Leonardo da Vinci made attempts at flying kites that looked remarkably like this, but you were explaining earlier that the problem was he didn't know enough about aerodynamics, things like the centre of gravity and so on, which get your kites off the ground now.
Oh, well, he knew all about these things, but we've got more knowledge on it now than what he had in that time,
Your technology enables you to get the kites flying properly. Now, the whole thing depends on the A-frame and the centre of gravity that the kite has.
Well, that's right. The A-frame, or the control bar, it is where you hang on the kite. You're connected to it with harnesses and all your straps and everything to make it so you don't fall out of the kite, of course. Once again, all for safety. Now, the A-frame, or your control bar, is where it goes up to the top and it touches for the centre of gravity. Now, your centre of gravity, it's the best flying part of the kite. It trims the kite actually, and with that, when you press the bar in or out or sideways, it shifts the centre of pressure, CP they call it, centre of pressure, and this will either make the kite go up or down depending on which way the A-frame is moved, pushed out or pulled in. And the centre of pressure quickly moves back or forward, as I say, to whatever you do with the bar.
Is there a lot to learn on the ground before you actually get into the air?
Well, this is advisable to learn on the ground. Just hold the kite into a little bit of wind, see what makes it fly. In a wind like we have here, it would lift you up. If you just were there and had someone holding the front, the kite will lift into the air by itself, and you can learn to control it quite good before you even attempt to run off cliffs or tow or anything.
Now, you're interested in the international side of competition in this sport too, and you'll be competing in international events soon, I understand.
Yeah, this is for sure. We're pretty keen on the competition part of it. We're off to America, to Cypress Gardens, to the hang tow flying. This is a very popular sport, and young Rick, he came 5th in the world titles. There was quite a team went from Australia over, and we had a real good time.
And as well as the tow flying, you compete in other events too?
Yes, we're off to Austria, Italy and Germany, where there's what's called the World Cup Series, and we're flying this, and it should be a real ball once again.
Now, you've actually retired as a competitor because you feel that looking after the boys is more or less a full-time responsibility for you anyway.
Oh, well, I worry about them a bit. As I say, I retired. My aim was to win the Australian titles, and I'd done this just a little while back, and I thought I'll retire on top. And I put all my time into the boys now, training them.
I wonder how much money you would have actually spent on the sport. Would you have any idea?
I shudder to think.
The life expectancy of a kite is something like a year. That's with luck on your side, I suppose.
Oh no, it'll last longer than this. I have a kite at home that'd be 7 years old. It's one of the originals, and you get a bit sentimental about them. It's the advancement that kites are going through today. They're coming ahead in leaps and bounds, and sometimes the difference between a new kite and an obsolete one is 3 months, you know. Well, we've got the latest kites all the time and experimenting with them, and it's just hard to say how long a kite is going to last.
But you do get attached to your kite. You can say, oh, that was a beauty, I had that red and green one or blue and yellow one or something, do you? Because they have special things that make them a greater joy to fly?
Yeah, there's not the colours, but it make them fly like it wouldn't matter if it was a drab colour, it flies
that's the
good.
way you'd remember them in your own mind, perhaps.
Oh, well, I'm known as the red, white and blue and orange, and this is, or lemon I should say, this is my colour kites I always keep. And the one behind us here is Ricky's kite. It's, I think they call it the spectrum colours, the colours of the rainbow. But, you know, you do get attached to some kites and others you don't.
We've spoken to a lot of people so far that have been flying kites, but we haven't yet spoken to anybody that actually makes kites. And with me now is Chris McDonald. Chris, as I say, we've seen these people flying them, but we don't know much about the actual kite. Can you tell us a bit about it? Like, what are the frames made from?
Well, the main frame's made from high-strength aluminium. It's an alloy. It's about 40,000 pound PSI braking strain. You need a fairly strong frame that has to be also light, because it's very hard to carry a heavy frame back up the hill.
And what about the sails? What are they made from?
Well, they're made from sailcloth, the same as on sailing boats, about 4 ounce weight.
Now, it must take quite a while to put one kite together. What's the average time involved?
About 25-30 hours on a simple kite. It takes a new design would take 50-60 hours to make and put together.
And what would the wingspan of it be?
Well, this one here's 28-foot wingspan when it's spread out,
Yeah.
but they vary from 25 up to 34-foot wingspan.
And do you have to take your own weight into consideration, or the person has to take his weight in?
Yes, you do. It works out about 1 pound per square foot of sail area.
In the days of Leonardo da Vinci, they sort of had things designing sort of kites and things. What's your design based on?
Well, ours is more on a modern design, the Regallo design, which was developed about 1950, but we've continuing on from that development, and the later designs an extension of it, and they're becoming more like bird designs with shaped wings and that.
Any particular type of bird?
Well, the seagulls are the one we're trying to imitate at present.
And why the seagull in particular?
Well, the sparrow's not built for gliding, and the eagle, although it's built for gliding, it's got it's got fingertips on its wingtips, which it uses for soaring. They're too hard to imitate or to copy for a hang glider. There'd be too much construction work in it. Where with a seagull, its wings are bent, and it's fairly easy to bend your tubes to match the seagull shape.
Is your design any different to other basic designs?
Well, the standard design that I've got is about the same as everyone else, although the nose angle might be slightly different and the tube length slightly different, but overall it's about the same. But the higher performance kites, they're branching off in different directions, and they are slightly different.
What would the overall cost be?
Well,
if someone was actually buying a kite.
Well, they start about $400, and can go up to about $1,000 depending on how much you want to spend.
Chris, when you're building these kites, when you're building each one, do you tend to modify things a bit or add things on to improve the quality and performance?
Yes, in this day you've got to keep up with the times and you've got to improve each kite as you go along, otherwise you get left behind in performance.
How long can that take to get from, thinking of a new design to the actual finished product?
Well, about at least 3 months to really get one flying, and that's working on it fairly full time like.
Don't you think it's dangerous experimenting, sort of jumping out with a kite that's never been tried before?
Oh, I always get butterflies, but I take off fairly low down the slope and only in light winds so that I generally don't get into trouble.
Vicky, all of you chaps hold records in competition flying, but you're an international flyer of great standing now. Don't be modest, tell us about it.
Well, last year we went over to the World Tow Flying Titles. It's just a matter of going up on a 500-foot rope. You're allowed a 500-foot rope in competition, and you do manoeuvres in the air, and there's judges, and they
Says who's doing the best.
Yeah, they give you the points for your manoeuvres, and then you try to land on a target, and you lose points for how many feet you are away from the target.
Now, with manoeuvres, is it like gymnastics? Do you do your own program, or are there set manoeuvres that you must execute?
No, you do your own manoeuvres. Like you might want to turn right now, and you do left-hand turns and right-hand turns and all that kind of thing.
So it's a bit like ballet in the air.
Yeah. In hang gliding competition, they do have what's called an aerial ballet, and you got a set music. You can pick some music, and the music you pick, you've got to try to fly to it, doing manoeuvres to the music.
It'd take you hours to work out something like that, surely, and then the wind could wreck it all for you anyway.
Yeah. You have to have a bit of luck to go with it too.
Now, Russell, you're the one of the youngest hang gliders in the world. You're 13 now, and you've been flying for a couple of years.
And first time I went up, you only go up about 5-10 feet, and the first few times you go, you're just turning into the water. And I started tow flying first, and it scared me a little bit first, and I didn't like flying much until I flew these new kites, and now I can go up pretty high and do what the boys do.
Now, what kept you going when you didn't really like it all that much? Just the fact that your big brothers could do it, so you were going to master it too?
Oh yeah, well, most of the family, well, all the family do it, so I thought, well, I might as well do it too. So, I done it.
And you've mastered it and you love it now?
Yeah, I like it more than what I used to do it.
Shane, you're the other member of the junior flying trio of the family. What do you think about? You were saying that you go up and you hang off a cliff and you'll hang there till you get tired, sometimes hours. What do you think about while you're up there?
You just think about being up there. You don't think of anything else while you're flying. It's just a really free feeling, It's hard to describe. It's really hard to describe, It's just free when you're up there soaring and you see a hawk or something like that, and you just feel you're flying. You're just like that hawk,
We'd see far more clearly. Maybe then we'd know the best way we should go. That just has to grow and grow and grow. We breathe and the warmth we need, it's given to us free. so many ways, helps me reach to touch my sky. But I can't explain self-inflicted pain when there's room for all to play life's game. And as we know, our love must grow, or we'll never touch the sky.
Your father says he sometimes worries about you, and it certainly doesn't look all that sort of safe a sport. What sort of precautions do you have to take?
Well, it's a really safe sport if you treat it safe, but if you go and do dumb things, like you're gonna crash, the same as if you go flat out in a car along a highway. You got more chance of crashing.
You've just got to watch, mainly when you're flying too, that all the flyers are familiar with all your air rules and things like that. And if you get a learner who wants to find out all the information and that, they can just either contact us or some experienced flyer or something and find out all about it.
See, if they go and try to teach themselves, they might go off and crashing. They don't know why they're crashing, and it might even be the kite's fault if they don't buy a good kite.
So you had expert experience when you were learning from your father, and you're only too pleased to hand on your sort of expertise now to other people so they can do the sport safely.
Keep the sport safe and no injuries in the sport and things like that, because we want to get hang gliding on in Australia, because we feel it's a good sport. We want it to become more popular and everyone do it, sort of. You just got to control the area still.
Well, you've met the Flying Duncans. I've certainly enjoyed it, and I hope you have too. Hang gliding is certainly great fun, but it requires tremendous care and skill to do it safely. So if you're thinking of embarking on a hang gliding career, make sure you do it with safety in mind.
I'm flying, nothing around me but air. The sound of flying, basket of love in the sky. All of the time people wave as we go flying. Nothing around me but air. bye.